Hey guys, welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates. Today I'm sitting down with Steve Wible. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, RJ, man. Good to see you again.
Yeah, so I'm excited to bring you on the show today. I know we're going to talk about a little bit of real estate investing, but we're mainly going to talk about business credit and how real estate investors and entrepreneurs can use that to leverage themselves better. Take a quick second to kind of briefly introduce yourself and tell everybody what it is you do.
Well, my name's Steve Wible. I'm the head of business development here at Credit Suite. And I say here, I'm actually in my home today, unfortunately, hence the background.
Right?
Uh, but what we do is we show business owners how to get credit that's not tied to them personally. And it's a big deal. It's actually a game changer.
Yeah, it
So
is. I told you before, and I'm going to tell everybody that's listening. I'm super excited because I want to learn how to do this myself. This is something that my partners and I have been talking about for probably about the last 12 months, and it's because we're building our rental portfolios, and every time we want to go out and get loans or find any sort of leverage, everything is tied back to our personal credit. They want to pull our credit scores, and every time they do that, the credit score dips and it goes lower. And it's just this constant game that really no one can explain to us. You know what I mean? As much as you Google and you try to figure out how to do this, it's just a constant, well, just don't use your credit, but then you have to use your credit to go get loans. So I'm super excited to learn about business credit and how to remove my social security from everything. So before we get into the business credit side of things, you have previously or do own 300 plus rental properties. So let's talk about that because majority of our listeners are real estate investors. So how have you come up with acquiring those properties, and how much business credit did you use in acquiring those?
that's two great questions, RJ. So I no longer own those properties,
Okay.
FYI. I started in real estate. I sold my printing company in 1999, looking for something to do. Young age, I'm only 53 now. And my brother said, "Hey, let's buy some rental properties." I was in Camden, New Jersey. So I looked at what he was doing and said, "Yeah, this is great, but let's scale it. You got like 10. Let's." So my first deal, I bought 35. Very first deal. I had no money, had no idea how I was going to pay for it. I had some money, but not enough to buy 35 properties. But I got them under contract, found a hard money lender to lend me the money, and then sold half of them within a week that covered the entire loan. So now
Nice.
I have 18 properties that I own now, right? So that was our first foray into the business. And at one point, I was in Home Depot buying supplies, like we all are doing, right?
Right.
And I was offered some credit, and I said what you just said earlier, which is no, no, no. I got to protect my credit.
Right.
I need to keep my personal credit so that if a great deal comes along, I can take advantage of it. And the customer service rep said, no, 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 no. I'm talking about credit in the business name. I went, whoa, never heard of it. I mean, I
Right.
knew about it from my printing industry days, but that was just with vendors that I already was doing business with. So it never occurred to me that big stores like Home Depot and Lowe's and, vehicle finance, all of that was available. So anyhow, what I did is I took advantage of that. And as you know, when you get a hard money loan, they'll lend you money to buy the property. They'll escrow money for
Yep.
repairs. Well, what I did is I used Home Depot's credit to repair the properties. And then when I took the draws, I used that money for the down payments on my next properties.
Yep.
So I went from 0 to 300 within 2 years,
Wow.
just
That's incredible.
leveraging that. And every time I sold a property, what I would do is I would buy three, flip two, keep one.
There you go.
So that way I was paying off my debt, moving on to the next one. At some point, my hard money company was like, "You're my only customer." So I don't know
That's
if that's
funny.
good. I don't know if that's good or bad, but anyway,
Right. Well,
um, I,
you bring up the escrowing of the rehab funds. And, I just want to touch base on that because that can be a cash flow nightmare for rehabbers. And it's something that is really not talked about very frequently amongst podcasts and trying to scale up your company. It's really not an issue if you're doing one or two flips at a time. I mean, it can be, but it's really not an issue if you're completing the work within, a reasonable amount of time. But when you're talking about scaling up and, you're going to 0 to 300 properties in 24 months, I mean, you were doing a significant amount of properties at one time. And yeah, it could be a cash flow nightmare, especially when you're talking about having to go buy 3, 4, 5, $6,000 worth of flooring or cabinets or countertops for multiple properties. So leveraging that and finding a way to have that business line of credit or just credit in general that wasn't attached to your social security number is massive. So when you were at Home Depot and they said, okay, have you done business credit before? Did they even pull your like credit score, or was it strictly based off of the company?
Well, here's where I got lucky, because it doesn't work this way anymore. You know, times have
Right.
changed. They just basically, I was spending 30 to 40,000 every single month with them. I mean,
Right.
month in, month out. So I think and I was, you know how we all do this. We use Lowe's against Home Depot pricing,
Right.
and I was going, well, I was thinking about going to Lowe's. Well, they didn't want to hear that.
Right.
So I was fortunate enough to get it the wrong way. The right way is you have to have a certain amount of trade lines reporting, and then you apply for the business credit and you get approved. I learned that after I started working for this company. And ironically, I ran into this company in Florida, 1,800 miles away from where I lived. Heard what they were teaching, was like, whoa, I need to learn more of this because I know what it did for me. Imagine if I really knew what I was talking about.
Right.
And what people don't mention, and you did in the beginning, is look, when you use your credit cards, utilization goes up. What's your score do?
Right. Goes
Goes
down.
down.
Yep.
Well, with business credit, that doesn't happen at all. So you can use as much credit as possible. In other words, leverage other people's money without ever affecting you personally. And then more importantly, God forbid, something like, I don't know, that thing that happened in '08 that probably didn't affect many people. It affected me, but not many people got affected. If that happens, you're clean.
Right.
You're personally clean. So it has a dual purpose. One, it protects your personal social. Two, if things do go wrong, and look, we don't plan for things to go wrong, but we better not fail to plan.
Right.
Right. So it allowed me, and if I had my pictures, I could show you. I had my credit score so protected that when I had an opportunity to buy a 32-unit apartment complex and I had 5 minutes to make a decision, it was a tax sale certificate,
Right.
300,000. I was able to do that. I was just able to call my bank. I need 300,000. Here's what I needed for it. Done. Approved.
Awesome.
Because my credit was so good. And then I turned and flipped that for 1.1 million.
Wow.
So it's not about that deal, but it's about keeping your credit.
Right. Exactly. Right. So let's dive into this for the listeners. First and foremost, what is business credit? What is the best way to describe that to people?
Okay. So business credit is credit that is tied to your EIN, not to your social.
Okay.
So if you have an LLC or a C Corp or an S Corp, not a sole proprietorship is basically you.
Okay.
You can get credit in the company name. Now, it's not something that's magic. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. You have to build a profile. Just like when you turned 18 and got your first credit card, I'm sure it wasn't a $10,000 Discover with 0% interest.
Right.
You have to build that profile. Same thing with your business. You build a profile. The good news is business credit scores are based strictly on how you pay your bills, not on utilization, not on inquiries, not on what type of new credit you have or old credit. Do you pay your bills?
So let's use an example there. Say I go to Home Depot, using your example, and they give me $1,000 in credit. I go immediately and buy $1,000 worth of materials. You're telling me the best way for me to build up my business credit score is how frequently or how I pay back, right? So does it make sense for me to immediately pay it right back?
Well, you got to have time for it to report. Okay. Like I've seen people pay in 2 days. I'm like, you're paying cash at that point. That's not going to report as credit.
Gotcha.
But I'm a big fan of using other people's money till the very last minute.
Gotcha.
So once you get to, like, you would start off, Home Depot has a division that gives net 30 accounts, which doesn't sound exciting to people, but if you're flipping properties quick, 30 days is plenty of time.
Right.
Or if you have an issue with having enough cash, and I have seen this many times, having enough cash to do that 1/3, 1/2 of that rehab before the hard money company gives you your draw. How many times have you heard of people running out of cash and they can't finish it?
Right.
Now they have to bring in a partner. Now they're giving up equity. Well, if you can utilize a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Visa or a MasterCard to pay a contractor, get your cash. That way you're not bringing in partners. So what happens is if they bill you and the bill is due, let's say in 30 days, pay it in 20.
Gotcha.
That's going to report as paid as agreed is how it's reported. And then what'll happen is as your score goes up and your next level of credit that you move into, they start recommending you for higher and higher limits. Where with personal credit, it takes a long time to build up to a high level. It takes a long time to get to those $20,000, $25,000 limits.
Right.
Business credit, I've seen people get $50,000 in credit in 90 days.
Wow. So, okay, the first thing that you said is we have to start a profile, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we do that? Where do we go to start this business profile to start getting credit for this score?
Well, the first thing we're going to have to look at is we look at the fundability of a company. And when I talk about fundability, I'm really talking about credibility. So in today's day and age, lenders are looking for fraud. That's what they have to do. They use artificial intelligence to look for fraud. So if you apply for credit with my company through my website or even manually, we're going to run it through a fraud check. And we're going to check, does your company address match with the IRS, the Secretary of State? Do you have a legitimate phone number or are you using a cell phone? Do you have a legitimate email address? I love when I see people have mybusiness@gmail.com. Unfortunately, sounds good, not legitimate.
Right.
All right. It needs to be info@mybusiness.com.
Gotcha.
Phone number. You can't use your cell phone. You can't use Google. You need a legitimate business phone number. That doesn't mean you have to put a phone on the wall, but you can get something called a virtual phone number, which Google is similar, but you need to own it. So you have to go to somebody like RingCentral or Grasshopper or one of those pay-per-play type phones.
Right.
Okay. And you're going to list it with the National 411 database. Now, I don't know how old you are, but back in my day, you used to pick up the phone, dial 411 and ask for Joe's Pizza on Main Street.
Right.
Unfortunately, most people don't realize that database still exists. If you have a legitimate business, you're listed with the National 411 database. And when the artificial intelligence checks and you're not there, it's an automatic denial. Automatic.
That's funny. I did not realize that still existed. I do
still
remember it from my childhood, though.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So these are just a couple things that I'm touching base on. There are 225 points.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane, right?
Right.
This is why most people fail at it. And this is why most people give up really soon. And also why Credit Suite is a great company, because we teach people step by step exactly how to get there. And then once you're ready, we say, okay, these companies are the ones you want to apply for credit because they organically report to your Dun & Bradstreet and your Experian and your Equifax business profiles.
Right.
Now, I have to stop here, Dun & Bradstreet, because most people have heard of Dun & Bradstreet.
Right.
And they have to get their DUNS number. They have to go to Dun & Bradstreet and get that. And here's what happens. You apply for the number. They say, yeah, it'll be about 30 days. And then they immediately send you to their telemarketing division and they call you daily. They're the greatest telemarketers in the world. And they convince you you'll never get credit unless you buy their $1,200 program. And then if you don't buy it, they'll step it down to their $495 program.
Right.
But the reality is they're required by law to give it to you, to give you your DUNS number. The problem with Dun & Bradstreet's program is that if you stop paying them, in other words, next year it's time to renew. If you don't pay them, all those trade lines that they've added for you are gone. So you need to deal with legitimate companies. For example, Home Depot reports to Experian and Dun & Bradstreet. So you need to know that. And it has to be organic, because even if you don't use that trade line, every month, even if it shows zero, if you've used it at least once, it always says paid as agreed, paid as agreed. Well, as you're adding more and more trade lines, you become a stronger and stronger profile, just like your personal credit.
Right.
Make sense?
Yep.
So this is what we teach people. And it's a step-by-step process, and it's not fast. If you're looking for a shortcut, we'd already have it. It's a 6 to 9 month process to get to where everybody really wants to be. And I'm talking about things like vehicle financing. Anybody who's driving around looking at properties using their own personal car in their name is out of their minds.
So it needs to be in the company name. So for example, I have a car that is leased under my company name. That should be reporting back to as a trade line, or I should be getting business credit for that, correct?
Correct. You shouldn't have signed for it personally. If you had enough trade lines reporting, you could go to somebody like Ally Auto Financing, ALLY. And if you have enough trade lines, they'll approve you for vehicle financing that you don't sign for at all.
Wow.
So imagine having, like in my case, I had 5 companies. So I had pickup trucks, I had gas cards, I had, you name it. If you can keep as much of that operational debt, I call it, the day-to-day things in the company name, it just keeps your personal credit clean.
Right.
So that when that great deal comes up, the opportunity is there for you. And it sounds small to people, but when you really look at your day-to-day operational items that you spend money on, how many times are you tapping your Mac or using your Mac card or your personal Visa card? I'd be willing to bet it's thousands per month.
Oh, yeah.
Thousands per month. Well, take that and remove that from you and put it on the business. Guess what? Your score is not going up and down. But your cash flows were even worse. Your cash flow is not going up and down.
Right. Well, and also I think one of the biggest, at least in my world and the people that I talk to, one of the biggest trends over the past couple of years is the credit cards that you're using to receive the travel rewards. So you're going out and you're rehabbing a house and you're using this credit card and you're putting that $10,000 a month on your rehabs on this credit card so you can get reward points for travel. So you can essentially travel for free. Is that something that you can still obtain and get within the business credit, like those credit cards that give you these rewards for the amount of money that you're spending?
It depends, and I get what you're saying, but to me, that's giving up your personal credit score for travel.
Exactly.
So if I asked you that question, take away what you're doing. Hey, listen, I'll give you free travel if you let me wreck your credit score every other month.
And that's kind of how it feels. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like. I mean, I've gotten some free travel to different events and it's like, yeah, but go look at my credit score. I mean, it's bumpier than a roller coaster and it impacts our business. I mean, especially as real estate investors, like when we go to banks and we try to get approved for loans, and even some hard money lenders want to know our credit scores. And so that's pretty intense when, we go get a deal and it's like, hey, this is going to be a great, sixplex that we're going to keep forever. And I go to refinance it and suddenly the bank's like, hey, your debt ratio is too high, so we're not going to approve you for a loan. When it's like, all I did was go put 2 rehabs material costs on a credit card. This is intense. Like you're literally altering the future of my family and my business because of a mythical number, because I utilized the credit that you allowed me to have. I mean, how crazy is that? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Look, in the end, we as small business owners, and when I say we, I'm talking about 99% of business owners, we were never exposed to this business credit building blueprint. But I can tell you this, besides Amazon, because they've overtaken them, who's the #1 retailer in the world?
I do not know that.
Yes, you do. It's Walmart.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I was going to guess. It's too late now. I should have just said it.
Listen, Walmart's entire business plan is based on business credit.
Okay.
When you buy something off the shelf, they haven't paid for that yet.
Interesting.
They get credit for that. Sam Walton didn't sign for trucks. Right now, obviously, they became an institutional borrower once you hit a certain number, over 50 million. But you had to get there. Every major CFO in the country knows about business credit and exactly how to utilize it. But we're not taught that. I mean, look, this is terrible. I was taught how to do a checkbook in high school. I'll bet you they're not teaching that now.
No, they're not.
Right.
And
accounting and whatnot. This is, we like to say it's an insider secret, but it's been around forever. Just nobody talks about it because we're so used to, it's so ingrained in our heads. When we see an application that says social security number, we just fill it in, right? Well, people don't realize you can submit that application without anything there. Now, don't ever put any other number in there. That's breaking federal law.
Gotcha.
But you can submit an application with no social security number on it. They have no choice but to run your business credit at that point. And business credit is reported based on your address. So they just run it through. D&B automatically pulls the info and gives it to them. Experian automatically pulls the info and gives it to them.
Gotcha. So I want to circle back to one thing that you said earlier about Dun & Bradstreet, though. You said that when you go to apply, they're going to ask you to pay some money, and then they're eventually going to lower you down to this $495. Do we pay the $495? Is that what we need to pay?
You don't pay a penny.
You don't pay a penny. But then you said 12 months later.
No, okay. Let me explain. They're going to convince you that if you don't buy their business credit building program, you'll never get credit. What they're doing is they're taking existing vendors of yours and they're going to place them on. So you're paying them and then you have to do all the work. You have to say, here's one of my vendors, here's another one, like let's say a contractor. Okay. Sounds like a great idea. But the problem is that those active trade lines become dead trade lines if you don't renew the next year.
Gotcha.
So don't pay them a penny. It's not worth it. First of all, you're only building up your D&B profile. What about your Experian? By the way, banks look at Experian. Real cash credit, they look at Experian. So you need to know exactly who to use, who actually reports organically, who actually will do it whether you pay D&B or not, whether you pay Experian or not. You don't need to pay D&B anything ever.
Because
Now,
the other trade lines are automatically going to report to DMB, right?
or whoever they report to. So
Gotcha.
you've got your three majors are D&B, Experian, and Equifax. With Experian, you're going to have what's called your BIN number, your business identification number. So they have business credit profiles. They're all automatically going to report. Like, I'll give you an example. A company called quill.com. Your listeners might want to write that down. QUILL.com.
Okay.
They are like a tiny little Amazon. They sell office supplies, paper towels, you name it. About 1 million products. They're one of the beginning vendors to give you business credit.
Okay.
Now, you have to make sure your business is set up credibly, but they will give you credit, and then you'll use the credit, you'll pay the bill, and they'll automatically report. Automatically. If you never use them again, it's going to continue to report as zero balance, but you have X amount of available credit.
Gotcha.
You don't need to pay for that.
Is there anything that we need to do to set up with Experian?
It should automatically happen. If not, they can reach out to me at info@creditsuite.com. I can get them the link they need. But it's fairly easy. Dun & Bradstreet, they can go to dnb.com, the letter David, the word and then B like boy.com. Just apply for your free DUNS number. Don't buy any of their products.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. I did this way back when. I think I stumbled on some forum that talked about business credit, and so I went on to dnb.com and I applied. And you're not joking, man. Every real estate investor that does cold calling should just go apply at DNB, even if this doesn't resonate with you, just to experience what their marketing team does and try to mirror relentlessness that they have. Because, I mean, it does get to the point where you just literally have to tell them, like, stop calling me, and they still don't stop calling you.
Well, my favorite line, the way you get it, because they will delay your number for 30 days for an opportunity to sell you, is to tell them, hey, I'm broke. I don't even plan on doing business for the next 12 months. I'm just getting my number now. And you know what? That's it. End of conversation.
That's funny. That's funny. So let's talk about utilizing business credit to obtain loans. Is that something that can happen outside of just like lines of trade lines and credit?
Yes, but I'm going to tell you, I know where you're going with this, and take it from me and experience. When you go for a business loan, I told you there's 225 points they're going to look at. In those 225 points is also your personal credit, your cash flow, your business credit profile, all the credibility things we talked about. So what it will do, it will change the rates you get, the amount of loan you get. I'll give you an example. I'm going to give you our example. We did a test on our own company. Now, we have what's called a high-risk company because we have the word credit in our name. And by the way, to your listeners, real estate is considered high risk. Okay. So if they are thinking about starting a new company, go with something vanilla like Oak Tree Enterprises, right? Means nothing. That can be the main company. You can have all these other companies below it. But like I had 5-Star Property Management, Freedom Real Estate Enterprises. I had all this. I had no idea about this high risk industry stuff.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. Anyhow, so we had a difficult time. We ended up doing what's called revenue financing, which even real estate investors can get that. If they have enough rentals, they can actually borrow money against that rent.
Right.
But the interest rate's stupid. The interest rate is just out of control. So we took a $70,000 loan. We had to pay back, I don't know, $7,000 or $9,000 a month. And then we fixed all the issues we had to fix as far as, the credibility section, what I'm talking about, those 225 points. And then went and applied for a SBA loan, got $350,000, and the payment was only $3,000 a month. So we got 5 times the amount of money and 1/3 the payment. So if you don't think those credibility issues matter, they're huge.
Right.
Huge. I had a client who went through our program who got turned down for an SBA loan for $50,000, turned down, went through our program, went back 6 months later, applied, got an automatic $100,000 approval. Nothing changed. His credit score hadn't changed. His cash flow hadn't changed. Only thing that changed was what we helped him do on our side. So so back to this. To anybody who's listening out there, you are never going to buy a property on business credit because you're still stuck in that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac box. They're going to need somebody to sign personally. But once you get multiple properties and you want to go for a business loan on them, which is what I did, They are going to look at your business credit. It will change your rate. It will dictate the type of loan you get. But
So you're saying you could use the loan basically for like a portfolio loan, like a refinance of them?
exactly.
Gotcha.
But they're still going to look at you personally, and they're still going to have you personally guarantee it 100%. That's always going to happen.
So yeah, I mean, you're pretty much always going to have to personally guarantee the money on real estate, no matter what.
Exactly, except with certain hard money loans. But
Right.
in general, that's going to be the case because look, they want to take the property if you don't pay.
Right.
Right. So until you get what they call an institutional borrower, like for example, I did a 187 unit apartment complex. We used tax credits and bonds. There was all kinds of other things going on, but this was a monster deal.
Right.
This was a $5 million deal with another $10 million back end on it. I don't want to dive too deep into this because I don't want to confuse people.
Right.
But I just want to be clear. I have investors call me all the time. I want to buy a fourplex. Can I use business credit? No, you cannot. You want to use business credit for your day-to-day operational stuff to protect your personal credit so you can buy that fourplex.
Right. Well, and it also helps with your cash flow. So you're
Absolutely.
you're not using your own cash to buy things that are basically going to be reimbursed to you at some point in time anyways. So you, instead of using a personal credit card and hurting your personal credit, so when you do need to utilize your personal credit to get the loans from the banks, it's squeaky clean at that point in time.
Exactly.
Not tied up with $10,000 worth of credit card debt that was covering flooring or, like you brought up, office supplies. I mean, computers and, these types of things that we have to have as companies.
How about a $40,000 F-250?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, seriously, people don't think about it because they look at it as their vehicle. But look, my truck said I buy houses on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So why would I want that in my name?
Right.
That
And you
needs to
bring
be
up a
there.
really good point on that, because so often we have our vehicles in our names, and that's showing up as a debt, a liability that we have on our personal credit, right?
Exactly.
And so it's just, again, it's just making you more of a risk. And you bring up a really good point on, real estate investing is a high risk industry in the eyes of lenders and banks, right? Every time I go sit down with a small bank, they always look at me and they're very skittish at first, because when they're looking at it, they're seeing lots of income and lots of expenses coming in and out, and they're seeing high turnover of properties, and they want to ask me, like, what happens if you can't turn these properties? How are you going to sustain this? These are questions that they have, and it's all going back to the fact that they're it's just their bread to think that this is a very high risk industry. So it is interesting that you brought that up, that is a fact. You brought up that, your name had credit in it and that made it high risk. Mine has investments in it. Would that make it immediately high risk?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's so funny. Nobody out there says that, right?
Nope.
You don't think about that when it's just like, okay, who are we? All right, I want to be Titanium Investments. That's what I'm going to call my company. You don't think about it at that point in time that, down the road when this actually works and you try to figure it out, now all of a sudden you're high risk because you put that in your name. But if I just called it RJ Bates Enterprises, I wouldn't be high risk anymore?
Nope, you would not.
That's crazy. I should
It
have named
is.
it that.
Listen, I had Freedom Real Estate Enterprises, and if you break that down, it was FREE. I was free from my job, right?
That's awesome.
5-star property management, obviously just went for the 5 stars. So everything I did was wrong.
Right.
I mean, everything I did was wrong. But you also have to decide whether you need that from a marketing point of view. Look, Credit Suite, we really need that name.
Right.
Because from a marketing point, people have to understand what we do. But if as a real estate investor, who cares?
So let's talk about Credit Suite a little bit here. Walk me through how that process works. You've brought up that you guys kind of walk us through the checklist, the 200 plus items that we need to do. Is it kind of a mentorship program where you're holding our hand through the process, saying, okay, this is the next step that you need to take to building business credit? Is that kind of what it's like?
It's exactly what it's like. What we've done, and our COO and our CEO just put this together perfectly. We have a program that you get your own login, and it's a step-by-step, almost like a paint by numbers, right?
Right.
Like you remember those days. We're not that old. it's a step-by-step process, and then you get advisors that hold your hand through the process. These are advisors that you can call. I don't care if it's 5 days a week. We don't limit people. Most coaching programs, as you know, will limit people to the number of calls per week, per month, whatever. We have unlimited. You call as many times you have a problem. You get turned down for something, call us. We'll look at it and tell you why you were turned down. In fact, we give you the full underwriting criteria for every single person in our program. We tell you what Home Depot needs to approve you. We tell you what Lowe's needs to approve you. We tell you what that Fleet MasterCard is going to ask for, what they're going to look at to get you approved.
Nice.
It's really cool. And it's a step-by-step process, and it takes time. It's, you don't flip a house in 3 hours. Well, unless you're a wholesaler. So it's going to take time. Typically, I see it takes 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
And there's always a hurdle or two to overcome. Usually it's something minor. I mean, we had one couple that they didn't get it. They got turned down at their bank for a $100,000 line of credit, came to us. We showed them what they had wrong, and they've gotten over $500,000 in loans since. It was one thing. The Secretary of State had a mismatch. It was literally something as dumb as that. Or worse, I've seen this. Don't use a P.O. box for your business address. Don't ever use a P.O. box. I get it for tenants. You want them to mail a rent to a P.O. box. I totally get that. But your business should be registered at an address. Your IRS should have the same address. All your marketing should have that address. It all needs to match. You can have a P.O. box just for your tenants in a lease. That's it.
There you go. See, that's really good advice. I mentioned to you earlier that we were just moving offices, right? Mm-hmm. So now would not be a very good time for me to start trying to do this because I have things that I need to tighten up on my end, right? I need to go make sure the Secretary of State's going to have my new address. I need to make sure that everything lines up before I start this process. Very good tip. So if you don't mind sharing, what does that look like financially? Is it a monthly cost, annual cost? How does it work?
We have multiple programs. Our core program, which is the core of our business, obviously, that program sells for $597 a month for 7 months. You get 5 years access. You get a whole finance team to help you, including hard money lenders, lines of credit, revenue financing, and if you can't afford to do or if you want a discount, we'll offer you a one-time pay of $29.97. So one time you get a discount of about the $1,200 or $1,300. But we have other programs too. So don't let that discourage you. If you're listening out there and you go, oh, that's a lot of money. Right. Just reach out to us. If you don't mind, can I give the email?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just go to info@creditsuite.com. That's SUITE. We have other programs that involve a little less hand-holding, but you get access to the whole thing that's going to cost you significantly less. So if this is something you feel like you need, and if you want to ask for me personally at info@creditsuite.com, that's fine. They'll forward it to me, and I'll personally respond.
And I'll make sure to put all that in the show notes below. Before we wrap up, do you have any kind of final thoughts about business credit or how to properly utilize Credit Suite or anything along those lines before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, I would say that, look, even if you don't work with us, figure it out. This is something you need to do. Look, we didn't invent it. We didn't create it. We just organized it and sped it up. But if you feel like, look, I want to do this, but I don't want to do it with anybody else, that's fine. It's going to take you 3 to 4 years, but do it because it will change the game for you. We just talked about it. Just not having that debt in your name personally will change everything. It may make the difference between you making $200,000 and $500,000 a year.
Exactly. So for all my listeners, I'm going to share a little bit of a story here as we wrap up. So once you have an established podcast, there are companies out there that actually send you emails with these pages with guests. This is Steve's page right here. This comes from a company that says, hey, I have a great guest and I would love to get him on the Titanium Vault. So the first time I got the email about Steve, I briefly glanced over it and I said, why would I want to have a business credit guy on a real estate investing podcast? That doesn't make any sense. And I deleted it. And then the second email came through and she added a little caveat. She said he owned 300 rental properties. Well, that made my dumbass read it. And so then I actually started thinking about this and I read his page here. And this is also due to my partners coming to me and saying, hey, RJ, we need to be utilizing business credit. Like this is something we need to be doing. This is something they have previously done in some of their other companies. And so I found it important enough today to bring Steve on here for you guys to understand what this is and to utilize it within your companies. I think that this is something that is so vital when we talk about on here building generational wealth and all of these different things, passive income, these catchphrases that as real estate investors we use. This is a tool in your tool belt that the majority of people are ignoring. And like you said, it's not a secret. Anybody can find out about it, but very few people are actually doing it. And I love your story about Walmart, how they're probably the number one person utilizing this to their advantage. What a great analogy there. As business owners and entrepreneurs, why would we not want to follow those footsteps? So Steve, thank you so much for sharing this. CreditSuite.com, info@CreditSuite if you're interested. If you enjoyed today's episode and you're listening on iTunes, please give us a 5-star review. If you don't want to give us a 5-star review, go give your 4, 3, or 2-star review to someone else, not me. I only want 5-star reviews. And if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and a subscribe. All right, guys, that's our show for today. We'll see y'all next week. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you.